Good morning, or good night, or good afternoon, wherever you're listening from. I'm Renya, I'm your host, and welcome to WC Wellness. I'm going to talk about some of the life skills I've learned in therapy, but first, I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, because who am I and why do you want to listen to me? I am 20 years old. I was adopted from China at about a year and a half. I am currently a senior at Westchester University. I'm attending for media and culture. Some of my hobbies are art, I like to read, I like to go to the gym, I like to paint, all of that kind of stuff. But basically my credentials to talk about some of this stuff is the fact that I have been in therapy since I was 3 years old. It was on and off. I've been in therapy for about, I want to say 11 to 13 years of my life. Throughout the 20 years of my life, so much crazy stuff has happened and so much bad stuff that's very hard for a lot of people to go through has happened. And now everyone internalizes things differently. I internalized everything very, very poorly, hence why I was in therapy since I was 3. Throughout the entirety of my life, I've struggled with a lot of different things such as depression, anxiety, healthy eating habits, OCD. And for the first 18 years of my life, it was complete chaos. I mean, for example, my family life was awful. I had intense suicide ideation, and I don't even know if I'm allowed to say that on here, but everyone acts like it's such a bad word. It's not, it's a medical term. Anyway, the list could go on and on, but that's besides the point. So I've basically been in therapy for most of my life, but I didn't use it, and that's the key factor. I had all of this knowledge, all of these skills that my therapists have gave me over the years, and I refused to use it. And that was probably why I was so miserable most of my life. But once I hit university, I decided that a life like that was not super fun to live, and I had to do something about it because I am the only person that can change my own cognitive behavior. My freshman year of university, I actually ghosted my therapist, but it took me a couple of months and some events to happen, and then I'm like, you know what? I should probably listen to all of my therapists in my past, and I should probably use these skills, and that's exactly what I did. And let me tell you, my life has never been better. Therapy has really helped me build strong interpersonal relationships, whether it's platonic, whether it's romantic, or whether it's familial. And one of the biggest things for me was emotional dysregulation. The smallest thing could absolutely ruin my day. If I couldn't find my water bottle before the beginning of school, I would probably be in tears and I would probably be very, very angry the entire day because I lost my water bottle for some reason. But after using the actual skills and everything and being able to regulate those intense emotions, little stuff like that doesn't bother me anymore, and life has been so calm for me. And that's just an example that can happen to everyone, and I understand that not everyone is as emotionally dysregulated as I am, but there are a lot of people out there who do have trouble managing their emotions, and that's completely okay. I mean, personally, I might be biased, but I think everyone should go to therapy. Maybe not trauma-based therapy, but skills-based therapy is so good for you. You don't have to have a diagnosis. You don't have to have this, that. You don't have to have anxiety, depression, bipolar, borderline personality disorder, any of those labels that therapists put on you. You don't have to have it. You can be a completely normal person, and these skills are going to be helpful because everyone gets stressed, everyone gets angry. Those are normal emotions. We should feel that. However, what we shouldn't do is either take those emotions out on other people or let those emotions control our entire lives. And now, I'm gonna be a little honest. I haven't been to therapy in about a year and a half. The main reason for that is I am poor. I am a poor college kid and I have no money, and therapy is oh so damn expensive. Insurance is like, no, you're not mentally ill enough. We don't want to cover this. And I'm like, oh, okay, my bad. But just because I'm not actively seeing a therapist doesn't mean I'm not actively using these skills in my everyday life. So let's get into them. So the first term I wanted to share is dialectical thinking. Now you might be thinking that that is a big word, and you are right. But basically the word comes from the Greek word dialectic, and it means, and I quote, dialogue between people holding different points of view about a subject, but wishing to arrive at the truth through reasoned argumentation. So in my own words, it's about being open-minded. You gotta be open-minded, especially when you're talking to other people. It doesn't matter their political stance, it doesn't matter their ideologies that they've had since they were maybe 2 years old, it doesn't matter this, that. Dialectical thinking is changing your thought process so everyone is valid. The main point of dialectical thinking is avoiding black and white thinking, and that's a cognitive distortion, and I'll tell you about that later. And I'm gonna give you a real life example that happened when I was growing up. I was a bit of a troublemaker when I was a kid, and I was 17, I believe, and I wanted to be able to drive myself to work. I had my license and everything, but my parents just didn't trust me. So in that situation, I'm 17 years old, I'm angry, I want to be independent, this, that, and my parents are like, I want to keep you safe, this, that. So what do? If I wasn't thinking dialectically, I'd be like, my parents are the worst, they hate me, blah blah blah, whatever nonsense I wanted to come up with. But simultaneously, my parents are thinking, oh, Renya, she's gonna do something bad, we can't trust her, blah blah blah, we don't want her driving a car. Through an objective lens and thinking dialectically, both points are right. Why can't Renya drive to work? Also, why should she drive to work? We both had valid points in that situation. I wanted my freedom because I was 17 years old and I was just going to work, and my parents also had a valid point of, hey, if we can't trust our daughter, why should we allow her to drive? Obviously, if I put myself in my parents' shoes, I get it. But if they also put themselves in my shoes, they'd get it too. One thing I forgot to mention that's super important to dialectical thinking is to avoid extremes. For example, not thinking dialectically would be, my parents never let me drive, they always want to take away my freedom, they must hate me, this, that, and my parents' non-dialectical thinking would be, Renya's always so untrustworthy, Renya's always getting up to trouble. It's kind of based upon the assumption that someone is never going to change. I mean, if I feel that my parents always this or never that, there's not an option for compromise. And it's the exact same on their side. If they're thinking that I'm never going to be responsible, that I'm always getting into trouble, then there's gonna be no compromise and we're just going to be sitting in our little boxes being mad at each other. And what's the point of that? Where does that get us? But if we both try to use dialectical thinking and we put each other in each other's shoes, then things are gonna go so much smoothly because there's space for compromise. And that's the second part. Another one big skill I learned in therapy that I think everyone should know about is walking the middle path. Now this is DBT based, so that's dialectical based therapy. There's other kinds of therapy such as cognitive based therapy, trauma based therapy, etc, etc. I had been mainly on the skills therapy, which is work. If you want to change, you can't do that without putting in hard work. So the term in DBT therapy is called walking the middle path, and think of a Venn diagram. We want to be in the middle circle of the Venn diagram, and using my parents' example, my parents are on the left, I'm on the right. They don't want me to drive a car, I want to drive my car. How do we get to the middle circle? And when you're walking the middle path, you have to ask yourself, what can I do to get what I want, and what am I willing to give up? Now, in this situation, because I'm 17, because I live under my parents' roof, it is totally reasonable for them not to let me drive. Like, that's their car, it's their house, I am their literal child. If something happens to me, like, oh my god. So for me, I'm the one who has to compromise more. So in that example, I shared my Life 360 with them. I promised I would only drive to work and back. The Life 360 really helped. But I also tried to be more responsible around the house. I spent more time with them. I showed them that I could be trusted in order for me to get what I wanted. I accepted the fact that there had to be some kind of compromise and I had to be willing to do something for them in order for them to be willing to let me do something I wanted. One big thing about walking the middle path is to use the word and. For example, Renya has been untrustworthy in the past, but she has shown that she is capable of change and she is trustworthy. That wasn't even a good example of and. I didn't even use the word and, but you know what I mean. It's like, I am aware that I've been untrustworthy in the past, but I am going to change and I am going to accept my parents' viewpoint and I am going to do something in order to make them trust me. And that's exactly what I was able to do, and I was able to drive my car to work after about 1 or 2 months of putting in the work. I mean, that's what life is all about. It's about putting in the work to better yourself and better the world and better the people around you. There's a million more examples I can give about walking the middle path, what I've had to do in relationships, what I've had to do with my parents, what I've had to do with my friends, but just remember to always be accepting and open to change. Now, I think the next thing that I've learned in therapy that has been the most helpful is emotional regulation. Still using the same example, I am an angry 17-year-old who wants to drive. What do? I make a fuss. Now, I'm not saying it was right on my part, but it did happen. I was not happy. I was very, very mad that I could not drive because I felt entitled to driving. That's besides the point. Anyway, I was very emotionally dysregulated. There are a lot of all or nothing black and white thinking in my head. I thought my parents hated me. I thought they would never, and that's an example of an extreme, never trust me. I thought that they would never be good parents, this, that, all of this bullshit. There's two parts about emotional regulation. We have two different minds. It's called the emotional mind and the rational mind, and you can guess what those are. The emotional mind is exactly what I was talking about, the I hate my parents and they hate me. The rational mind would be, well, I have been untrustworthy, so why should they let me drive? That's so valid. But in between the emotional mind and rational mind, we have the wise mind, and the wise mind uses both of them. The wise mind is thinking, okay, I have been untrustworthy in the past, but I also want to drive, so I'm going to take a minute to calm down. I'm going to look at my parents' viewpoint. I'm going to take some mindfulness steps, and I'm just going to relax, chill out. Both parts of the mind are as equally valid, but you do have to find a middle ground in between the two. So if I'm in rational mind, and if I think, okay, my parents are right for not letting me drive, but I still want to drive, why am I just giving up that? So everything in DBT kind of circles back to each other, and it's all about like building blocks for skills and everything. So it's like then when I get into wise mind, when I decide that yes, I am upset that my parents won't let me drive, but also they have a valid point, but also I still want to drive, I go back to walking the middle path, and then I think to myself, what can I do to compromise? How can I drive? It's kind of like Sense and Sensibility. If you know that term from Jane Austen, it's like leading with either your head or your heart. And let me tell you, for most of my childhood, I led with my heart. If I felt something, I would act on it like that. It was so bad. But at least being aware of these terms and being aware when I know that I'm feeling emotionally dysregulated, I can bring myself back to wise mind, but it does take work and it takes a lot of mindfulness skills. Some quick examples of those mindfulness skills are things such as taking 5 minutes. It's like, hey, I'm feeling really emotionally dysregulated right now. You don't need to get the brunt of my anger. I'm just going to take a step back. I'm going to breathe. I'm going to calm down. I'm going to repeat some mantras in my head, and then we'll revisit the subject. Mindfulness is such a huge part of emotional regulation, and it's just being aware of what you feel and how to stop feeling it. And with that, that brings us to a term that I brought up in the beginning, cognitive distortions. So, as simple as it is, cognitive distortions are when your cognitive thoughts are distorted. Pretty self-explanatory. Everyone always has cognitive distortions, but the main point is recognizing them and being able to battle them. So, for example, some terms of cognitive distortions are black and white thinking, future telling or fortune telling, catastrophizing, overgeneralizing, blaming other people, and some really good examples of that are things like, hey, my friend didn't say hi to me in the hall when I saw them at school. They must hate me. They don't want to be my friend anymore. They are planning something against me. They're gonna tell all of my secrets to the boy I like or whatever. Or they always do this. I mean, in this case, which is a real life example from high school, my friend was going through some stuff. She missed her bus. She had to call her dad, blah, blah, blah. It was a whole mess. But I thought it was because of me, because of my cognitive distortions. One really good way to battle cognitive distortions is everything I've already mentioned. Just take a second, take a step back, take some breathers, you're fine. So in this specific example, when my friend didn't say hi back to me, I was emotionally dysregulated, I was having really bad cognitive distortions, and I was using my emotional mind. And because of that, bad actions can happen. You know, I can stop being friends with them, end the friendship, and for what? Because they didn't say hi to me? Because I'm overgeneralizing, catastrophizing? No, that's stupid. So when you have cognitive distortions, it's really important to counter them, and that is using dialectical thinking. My friend also has stuff going on. How they act towards me is not a reflection of me, it is more of a reflection of what they have going on in their lives. It's unfair for me to expect that they always treat me with a super happy, smiley face and super positive, outgoing energy. And it's definitely not fair for me to act any different because I think that this is happening. And that's an example of fortune telling. I don't know what's happening. I can't read their mind. With my relationship with my parents, I had a lot of different cognitive distortions, I had a lot of emotional dysregulation, and I did not use dialectical thinking, and that contributed to why we had such a poor relationship. However, within the past 2 years, I've been actively working on all of the things I've mentioned. I have been thinking open-mindedly. I have been more than willing to compromise. I have been noticing my cognitive distortions and battling them. And then I've also been trying to get into wise mind. It is so hard to exist in a world where so much is coming at you all the time. We all have some kind of brain deficiency. Something's wrong with us, you know? We're all sad all the time. We all have to work. It sucks. But it sucks even more when you are the problem, when you are the cause of your own pain and cognitive distortions and dysregulation. And the only way you can remedy that is by working on yourself and being aware of your thoughts and your thought processes and how you view other people and the situation. I always looked at a turbulent situation through a subjective lens. It's me, my thoughts, my feelings, blah, blah, blah. Now, I wouldn't directly invalidate other people's thoughts, but it's just I kind of put myself first. And yeah, there's nothing wrong with putting yourself first and a little self-care. However, to manage interpersonal relationships, you have to compromise. And because I've compromised, because I've worked on myself, because I've recognized my own behaviors, my relationship with my parents has gotten so much better. And that's just one example that I've been using this entire time. There are probably hundreds of more examples and hundreds of different types of relationships that I have worked on and bettered myself through these therapy skills. And especially if you're not in therapy, if you haven't had the same background with therapy that I have, a lot of this stuff is really new for people and it can be hard to do. That's okay. Nothing good in life comes from being easy. Using these skills just takes a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of self-awareness. But remember, change and self-improvement never stops. It is never too late for a better self. I'm Renya and you're listening to WC Wellness.